With all the upcoming games releasing to round out 2024, I cannot overstate just how excited I am for Mario and Luigi Brothership. And with the game releasing in just over a month, it honestly feels like we still have a lot more to see. Obviously, with the game being an RPG, they can't give too much away, otherwise it could completely ruin the experience since a lot of this game is the story. However, there is still a lot that we want to know. What kind of characters will be in this game? What will the worlds be like? How will the game actually play? Well, even with just a handful of trailers, clips, and screenshots, we can already piece a lot of that together, and that's precisely what I'm going to be doing today. I'll not only be looking over every single piece of information we have, but I'll also be making a few predictions based on both what Nintendo's shown us and also what the series has done historically, so strap in because this is everything you need to know about Mario and Luigi Brothership. Starting off with the game's story, we already talked about this a decent amount when Brothership got revealed, but it pretty much boils down to Mario and Luigi are chilling out in the Mushroom Kingdom until they get sucked into a portal to an entirely new world. If you look at how their hands start glowing at the beginning of the announcement trailer, it seems fair to say that the subtitle Brothership is, in part, a reference to the bond between Mario and Luigi, especially because they are the only playable characters, which is very different from most of the previous Mario and Luigi games. However, if you don't know by now, Brothership is also a nod to, well, the brothers' ship. You can travel around hopping from island to island, and you can even launch yourself onto these islands from this cannon. Looking at the characters, there seems to be two common themes in this world, the first being electricity. A lot of the NPCs have faces that are shaped like power outlets. There's also this trio called the extension cores, which seems to be a play on the extension cord. I think a lot of the electricity elements will ultimately tie into the Brothership itself. The Brothership has this giant light bulb on top of it, and I would not be surprised if throughout the game you have to find ways to charge this thing up to continue traveling to different islands. On the ship, we see this pig-like character Snoutlet, which basically seems to be the star-low of this game, and we also see this character Connie that we really don't know a lot about. Then there's also this character that looks similar to Connie, however he's wearing a compass on his hat and has a telescope, which suggests to me he'll be the boat's navigator. The second theme that seems to be prevalent is gardening. A lot of the game's enemies and townsfolk resemble plants, and this also seems to tie into Connie's character as well. At one point, she can even be seen holding this sparkling water can, and it seems like gardening and harvesting will play a major role in the story. The trailer features this minigame where the bros are helping these flowers to bloom, and it also shows them jumping off these flowers while spinning. Perhaps gardening will also be how you power the ship? If you look at the logo on Connie's hat, it kinda looks like a fruit, but it also resembles a light bulb, kind of like the one that powers the Brothership. Maybe her watering can is where that ship's energy comes from. In terms of characters, it's also worth noting that Mario and Luigi are not the only Mario characters here. Remember, this world is not the Mushroom Kingdom, so when we see characters like Peach or Bowser, it kind of makes me wonder, how did they get here? Most of the enemies and NPCs we see here are completely original, but we also see Shy Guys and even piranha plants in the latest trailer. Clearly, multiple Mushroom Kingdom residents have been sucked into this new land, but why? Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, this guy. I do not know who this is, and we only see him for a second. His aesthetic does not really match any of the other original characters, and instead he looks like some sort of rabbit magician creature. I'm almost certain that he is the game's main villain, especially with how he stands over these members of the extension core, who are likely his henchmen. With how different he looks though from the rest of the characters, it's really hard to even guess what his motive is. Initially, I thought maybe he was the one who brought the Mario Bros into this world, but actually, I don't think so. Looking at the aura from this portal, it looks a lot like the same glow effect we see on Connie's watering can, so it seems more likely they were actually summoned to help rescue the people of this world from this big rabbit final boss guy. As for what role Peach and Bowser will have in the story, again, we only see them for maybe a couple of seconds. I think they will mostly be side characters, with there probably being a few fights with Bowser, but I do have one theory. Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team had giant battles, and in Paper Jam, that game had papercraft battles. I think Brothership will have a similar mechanic, but in the form of ship battles. Bowser here seems to be launching an onslaught of attacks from his airships, and I think he is directly targeting the Brothership, and just based on the way Peach comes sailing in on Dory, this cutscene seems like it's part of a battle. Perhaps she's here to help you. Maybe she can help repair the ship, and these little fruits are actually the ship's fuel. That's a bit dark, but hey, it could happen. Whether you can actually attack as the ship, or if you're just defending and repairing it, I genuinely think this could be a major battle mechanic. We saw a bit more of what this game's world will look like in the recent Greetings from Concordia trailer that came out a few weeks ago, and yes, it seems like Concordia is the name of this entire world that you explore, because aside from maybe some cutscenes, I doubt we'll see much of the Mushroom Kingdom here at all. Honestly, I find this to be be a great change of pace from the last entry, Paper Jam. Seeing actually new characters and environments will make this game feel so much more unique, whereas Paper Jam just felt really uninspired. And even with a completely new world to explore, there seems to be a ton of diversity in this game's islands. There's of course a grassy plain, a desert, but then this city, this circus-like area, these mountains, and a ton of other areas, such as this lava section. They all look really interesting. The Brothership itself will function a lot like its own area. I mean, it's not only huge, but clearly it even has its own save block. Will this act as kind of a hub world? Only time will tell. Speaking of which, it seems like the way you interact with these environments will be pretty similar to how it was in previous games. On top of save blocks, there's also item blocks and a few other interactables like this reverse block and this explosive looking block. There will also definitely be some puzzles and secrets. We've already seen this seesaw looking puzzle, but there's also some mini games like this one where you board these platforms, or the aforementioned one with the flowers. So I do think they'll have to be a bit creative with these puzzles, because back on the DS and 3DS, mini games often utilized the 2-screen mechanic, but obviously the Switch doesn't have that. Brothership makes up for this though with this tiny screen in the top right corner to show what Luigi's doing during this one puzzle, and I could see this secondary screen being a common occurrence for whenever we really need it. From the Concordia trailer, it also looks like the way you talk to NPCs and fight enemies is also the same in this game. They're just kind of scattered throughout the map, and these will either trigger battle or dialogue. Obviously that depends on whether you're talking to a friendly NPC or an enemy. Again, a lot of these NPCs resemble power outlets, and I imagine like in other Mario and Luigi games, you'll be able to enter a bunch of different houses or shops. We even see a few of these shops, which confirms that both gear and items will make a return. The store that interests me the most, however, is this one with a symbol on it that looks kind of like a spiny shell mixed with a cupcake. It appears that this character here is selling these desserts, and we don't really know what they'll do. Maybe eating one of these cupcakes will restore all of your HP and BP. I'm also really interested in how the bros moves will work in the overworld. We see some really interesting actions, like climbing these bars and bouncing on these flowers. However, the only move that I think is actually a bros move that we've seen is this spinning UFO action. This seems to be a complete revamp of the tornado move from past Mario and Luigi games. The last thing in the overworld I'm interested in is the UI. There's a glimpse of it at one point, and there's a lot to unpack here. We can clearly see that the bros have meters showing off their HP and BP. There's also this TV looking icon, which I think will be for the pause menu since it's attached to the plus button. As for this warp pipe, I think this would be for fast travel, since in past Mario and Luigi games, that's exactly what warp pipes did. There's also this speech bubble. If I were to guess, this will let you scroll through past dialogue, which is a common feature in other RPGs like Persona. Aside from your coin total, I'm also curious as to what this sparkly square pattern symbolizes. Again, it reminds me of the sparkling effect from Connie's watering can and also the portal, so I would not be shocked if this was tied into the ship's power somehow. The weirdest thing about the UI, however, and this is something I really haven't seen anyone else talking about, is this icon hiding in the corner. Can't see it? Well, if you look closely, there's this giant button on your screen telling you to subscribe. Seriously, we just want to ask you guys, if you are enjoying the content, just pressing like the one button to subscribe, or maybe also hitting like on the video, it literally allows us to do this, because then YouTube shares the videos, they get more views, and we know what you guys want to see as well. So seriously, it helps so much. Enough yapping, back to the video. Now I want to talk about the game's combat. This is one of those things that's always made the Mario and Luigi series stand out from other RPGs, and just from what we've seen already, this is looking like it'll have the best combat system across the entire series. In each game, Mario and Luigi's primary attacks have always been their jumping ability alongside the hammer attack, and we actually saw how those have been reworked in the initial reveal trailer. Rather than simply jumping, we see Mario somersault off of Luigi before launching into an enemy. The hammer attack also has been completely revamped, as instead of a traditional hammer swing, we see Luigi knock Mario into an enemy as he flies into the target, swinging the hammer in the air. This just looks so cool, but it's also so different from every other game in the series, so I initially considered that this might be a new bros attack using BP rather than the more standard attacks. However, in the recent trailer, we see actually a bit more of the combat system, and we can see Mario select the hammer attack before starting up this animation. This makes the most sense. I mean, yeah, the hammer attack is the hammer attack, but it just goes to show how even simple concepts that the series has kind of taken for granted are being completely changed for the better. Nintendo clearly wants everyone to know that not only is this a new game, it's a brand new direction for the series as well. We also see varying levels of damage output that you can do with these attacks. For instance, you can still achieve an excellent with perfect timing, and we also see what happens with some not so perfect timing, as the head of Mario's hammer flies off and hits Luigi in the face. I don't think this actually does any damage, but it is a very funny animation. Another thing about these attacks is that there seems to be some sort of status effect feature. In the initial trailer, after hitting a bomb-like enemy, the text "Kaboom attack" pops up, and the blast from the bomb actually damages some of the enemies around it. We see this again in the recent trailer, however, some of the surrounding enemies are unaffected by the attack since they have this surge protecting looking helmet on. We've actually seen features like this before. For instance, in Bowser's Inside Story, breathing fire does critical damage to trees and flying enemies can evade hammer attacks, but it's really interesting to see how far they may take a feature like this. It could completely change the fighting mechanics. Another status effect we see is this surprise iron ball attack, which seems to occur after some kind of standard attack. If I were to guess, this would be something that's actually tied to a piece of gear. Perhaps there's a set of overalls that has a chance of dishing out a surprise iron ball attack after each move for additional damage. This really does seem kind of in line with what has been done in other games. The only other thing I think is possible is that this mechanic is a feature you could unlock as you rank up. For instance, in Dream Team, every time you reached a new rank, you could select a new bonus to give to that character, like permanently taking less damage from enemies. I think this is more likely that it comes with a piece of gear, but there is a chance, I guess. We don't actually know that ranks are returning, but we definitely know that levels are returning. With each level, all your stats go up, and we can see the Mario Bros with different stats across different fights. We can even see the actual enemy level on display, which I think is completely new to this game. Obviously, the enemies had levels before, but they were simply programmed into the game, not actually shown to the player. Actually being able to see them this time around, it reminds me a lot of traditional RPGs like Pokemon, where once you encounter an enemy, you'll know if you want to fight them or not, since they might be a way higher level than you. Last thing about the level system, there's a few times where the word lucky pops up after an attack. This is almost definitely connected to the stash stat, that's stash as in mustache if you haven't played the games, which gives you a higher chance of dealing additional damage through a lucky attack the higher it is. Moving on to special attacks, we know about a few of these, including two returning ones, the green shell and red shell attacks. These attacks seem to function nearly identically to their versions from past games. However, there is a new cool finishing animation which takes heavy inspiration from Mario Strikers. It's worth noting though that Mario and Luigi will have their own attacks like in past games, since even these shell attacks, which are similar to each other, have some level of distinction. One of Luigi's new attacks is this dynamite clock-like attack. It seems like a very simple attack where you just switch between Mario and Luigi until the meter is full and press X, which will then release this lightning bolt explosion. I'm kind of curious where you can actually collect these special attacks from. In some games they come from puzzle pieces, while in Paper Jam you would collect them as Nabbit dropped them. Considering that we've yet to see a single puzzle piece, or Nabbit for that matter, I really have no clue. There's this one shot that shows off a sewer that's glowing from underneath. This could lead us to unlocking a new move perhaps. On the more defensive side, it looks like you can still deflect attacks with the hammer and also jump over certain attacks. But what's more interesting is this emergency guard button. I imagine this is like Paper Jam, where if you're not confident in your ability to dodge an attack, you can press this button to reduce the amount of damage you'll take, unless this is some sort of easy mode option where you can just evade any attack for free if you suck at the game. Finally, I want to talk about the battle UI. From this screenshot, we can see Mario deciding what moves he wants to use, which also show us the hammer, jump, and item blocks from past games. However, there are also 3 more blocks here, and if I were to guess, one of these would be the run mechanic and the other is for bros attacks. So what about the 6th one? Well, this is probably for a mechanic we are yet to see. Bowser's Inside Story and Dream Team, for example, had badges, and Paper Jam had a card mechanic. These features all use the bottom screen of their respective systems, but obviously the Switch does not have 2 screens. I would assume then this is Brothership's version of those mechanics. As for what this could be, really the only hint is the 2 plug icons shown at the bottom of this screenshot. The last thing I want to go over is some of this game's enemies. Now, I already talked a lot about how the enemies will affect the combat, so I won't go over every single enemy, but I do want to cover the main ones. I mentioned this mysterious magician looking character, and realistically, if he's the main villain, he will be the game's final boss, so I doubt we'll see his fight or anything about his combat before the game releases. However, we do know of some boss fights. The extension course seems like it'll be a reoccurring group throughout the game. When we actually see this boss fight in action though, we only see the main boss, which makes me think you might have to fight each of these characters individually before fighting them all at once. There's this moment where the leader says full extension, which I imagine will trigger a boss fight between all 3 of them. But another boss we see is this evil plant creature. The best way I can describe it is that it looks like Victory Bell the Pokemon. We don't actually see any of its attacks though. However, the fact that this fight is used to showcase the shell attack makes me think this will be a real early boss fight, because that's usually the first bros attack you unlock. The last boss we see is Garumbala, who appears to be this massive Hulk-like creature. All we really see from them is that they have a move that sends shockwaves out, and I imagine this is also one of the earlier bosses because it was shown off so early. It really seems like we'll get a mix of enemies that are associated with the main villain alongside enemies and bosses that just happen to be in your way, and there will definitely be some run-ins with Bowser as well, just like every other Mario and Luigi game. Overall, I just appreciate the amount of creativity and originality of this game. I cannot stress enough how redundant and underwhelming the story in Paper Jam was, with half its bosses being the Koopalings. I still think Brothership has a lot left to show us, but as of right now, I'm sold. I genuinely believe that this is the game we've waited for so long for. for. And with every new trailer that comes out, I feel more confident in saying that. However, do you guys agree? Let me know down in the comments below. How excited are you for this game to finally release, and what is one feature you think Brothership could use? If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and make sure to check out this video because Mario Party Jamboree comes out in less than a month, and we have a video talking about 20 brand new boss fights that we could see in that game. I'm Thomas from the Switch Stop signing off. Peace.